Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Today, we want to take you through the process of activation. So, creating an authentic brand identity has multiple facets. You need to understand your core values of yourself and your business. You need to understand your target audience. You need to be able to convey consistent messages across all platforms you might be using. And the main reason why is the marketplace is changing. It is in our world of startup, it is saturated actually. And whilst it is saturated, it remains dynamic and uncertain. And so being able to differentiate is becoming critical. Recent tech number shows that fintech, for instance, is not going to do that well in 2023. Number shows that it will probably be half of last year's number in terms of investment. However, generative AI startups are going to do super well. Some of the numbers shows probably $28 billion invested in generative AI technology. So something we all need to potentially use as we are remote workers and also trying to redefine ourselves in a faster way. Consumer are looking for unique experiences. Young customers and new talent only are engaging or joining companies that have defined clear purpose. So, with no further ado, we want to take you through the process of building an authentic identity. And my first question to Jess and Lisa is, how do we determine our authentic identity?
If I could, I would say I love that this program that we've been hosting together is called the Enquiry, because as with all things, it begins with an inquiry. It's going to be being curious about where do you stand right now in the landscape? And probably the quickest way to determine that is to simply ask other people. So we go to our mentors, we go to our colleagues, we sometimes go to our family members, but we go to people that we value their opinion, we trust them. And we start to ask them some really key questions, and we'll go over these, in person in Tel Aviv. But we give you some very key questions to ask so you can understand how are you being projected. They're the best sounding boards and mirrors to say, I see you this way, you sound like this. If I had to guess, I would say these are your values. And then we take all of that information from that investigation and we line it up against our own perceptions, our own intentions. And I think what we find is, sometimes there's alignment, a lot of times there's some misalignment, and it's a great place to jump off and start to begin to formulate an outward projection that's more aligned with our inner core values, as you speak of, our inner beliefs, our inner mission and purpose.
So, Lisa, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Me unmuted, Sabine? What? We can do a whole thing on that.
So how do you determine, looking at the work you are doing every day and also how you reinvented yourself, Lisa, how do you determine your authentic identity today?
One of the reasons why I'm so excited about partnering with you, Sabine and Jeff, on what we're doing is I personally went through my own journey in discovering my identity and who I was. And I would say, I think a misconception, and Jess, you highlighted it so amazingly, but I just want to amplify maybe what that meant to me when I was going through my voice, discovering my voice. And I had people telling me you need to have your voice, you need to have your unique point of view, and all these things. And intellectually it made so much sense, right? Yes, I have a point of view. But what I kept falling back on is defining myself by a sense of achievement or a sense of accomplishment or a sense of role or title. And Sabine, you'll love this, right? Because, most people don't, well, I don't know if they remember or not, but, I grew up as a classically trained accountant. I became a CFO first in the C-suite before I pivoted to becoming a COO and then strategy and then digital. And while that seems incredibly interesting and very beneficial, it was very confusing for people when I first was leaving that corporate world. I mean, first of all, I think they were like, you're a CFO, but you don't act like one. and you don't talk like one, but you have been one. Like, did you play one on TV? But they were also confused, quite honestly, about my dimensionality.
Yeah.
And so just to your point, I really had to spend time seeking feedback from people who really knew me well. Like, what would you say about me? And the people that I would ask never said, like, you're a CFO or you're this or you're that. They were able to kind of weave the tapestry together of, Lisa, you like to challenge, I just did a post about this. So I'll use that this week. You like to challenge the status quo, your ability to think differently. And I'm just using those as examples because I think to what you're both highlighting is without going through something like this, we often fall on those, I'll call it resume tactics or highlighting. And it's very appropriate. Like, what did you accomplish? What did you achieve? What have you done? And all those things are very relevant, but that's not your voice. And that's not what made you uniquely good at that skill set. So what I had to really do is, and I think other people will experience this too, it's not what you accomplished or what your achievements were or how much value you added, Sabine. And you'll know this as you're building your own business. It's your innate superpower that enabled you to do that. And I think Jess highlighted that amazingly. Sabine, one of the reasons we first met is because you are like one of the testaments to this. But interestingly, as we're all able to have these superpowers, it's hard for us to pause and actually identify what that was that contributed to us being able to do that. And I'll kick it back to you, Sabine. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah. When I think that hit it for me is when I built those two major acceleration programs for Startup Bootcamp, one in Europe and one in the United States, right? To be able to do that, you have to be really visible. You need to engage with startups every week. You have to engage with corporates every week as well. So corporate startup engagement has been my world now for 7-8 years. And what I learned very quickly is I had to build a personal lens and view of what the world of fintech, insurance technology, wealth tech is about. And my strength actually, and people say, well, she's in insurtech, but does she really talk about insurtech? My strength is adjacency. I can see how to bring new technologies into the insurance realm very, very well because I work for big companies like FICO, IBM, Pega, where I was always a translator between technology and making $1 million deals by translating it very well for the insurance industry. So I had to build presence on social. I had to talk, TED Talk style, I had to be on stage all the time. I had to build my own events, right? 1,000, 2,000 people events in Hartford, Connecticut, and here in Europe as well. And what you realize is when you decide to leave this type of ventures, well, people know you for the venture. And I had to disassociate myself from what I used to do, even though I still take care of my portfolio, right, at SBC. And the team is great. I still engage with them. I still have my email address because I have to take care of the portfolio. But still, I had to find a way to be Sabine. And the way, as you know, I approach the problem is I will not run one business. I will always have multiple business because no one should be ever associated with a single brand. It's part of our journey. So then you have to start defining your own personal mission, vision, goals, your own values, personal values, brand values, alongside, the businesses you're running, what is congruent and consistent around everything you do. And I call by businesses, projects, as you know. Then you have to really define that unique selling proposition, unique value propositions. But most of all, you really need to know who you're serving. And in my world, I serve startups, I serve corporate. It's why I'm passionate by corporate venture capitalism, so corporate venturing, which is very new still in insurance, right? Only 8% of investment come from CVCs. And imagine insurance is even smaller. And I did the study. We analyzed 850 CVCs around the world. It's something I need to spend some time this month to actually dive into and start writing about. But one thing which I had to learn to do, and I do every day, is build consistent stories, right? Every day when you write a post, the post is not just about posting, it's about structuring. It's about understanding what is going to trigger nicely the audience you are going after. And so all come back to congruence, authenticity, and consistency for me. So going back to you ladies, what has been able to help you determine your own authentic brand identity, and what can we do for others? What is our plan when we think of others to learn from our journey? Because we're not coming and building something we've never done. We do that every single day, and we've built this live workshop to actually share our personal story. And because I'm a professor as well at Bayer's Business School, right? We all know how to build a workshop or class, I would say too.
So to get to the point, Lisa alluded to it, you alluded to it. Simon Sinek has always talked about this start with why concept that everyone's very familiar with. And so, he speaks about it as doing that on a corporate level, on a, an organizational level. On a personal level, it works extremely well. I think I've defined my why and honed and refined my why multiple times over the last 25 years in business. And I think that's the jumping off point. It's why you get up. And so what you're talking about, Sabine, because my story is similar, although I work with startups in a different way, that is ultimately my target market. I know who I'm working with. I'm working with early stage founders and early stage investors, and sometimes introducing them, cultivating, advising, sometimes doing branding. And so, I work with an amazing branding agency out of Los Angeles called The Brand Terminal. I have my early stage venture company, New World Ventures. Then I am now expanding into doing some things in Europe with some other really great organizations. And so if someone looks at that on its face, it could seem, disjointed, incongruent, and like, what is all of that? How do you do all of this? What's the common thread? So for me, because I know my narrative really well and I've intentionally worked on it, I can tell you that story in a few seconds, and it connects all of those dots. It makes sense that I'm involved in these multiple organizations, projects, as you call them. And it's a very simple, easy story to tell. It's natural. So I think that's because my why, if you want to know, is I like to help heart-centered leaders materialize their vision. Meaning, if you're a person that's working from a conscious, beautiful place, where you want to create and envision things for humanity, and you're a visionary, an idea maker, but the struggle is very real for many people like that, is to take this and then bring it into reality, manifest. This is a solid thing with form and function and a plan and a pro forma and, and everything you need to actually make it a reality. Then I'm your girl. And I will work with you on whatever elements you need to sort of bring that to reality. And that's why I do it in all those different ways. So that's my personal why, is I want to help those people with that thing. Some of us don't stop to think about why we do it, right? So we have a why, we just don't know what it is. We just, like Lisa said, we haven't taken the pause to stop for 5 seconds, stop doing 20 things and just go, but why am I doing this? You do have a reason. And so
Yes.
I think that's the place where we really come in with this workshop, and we're going to help you articulate that. And now all of your projects make sense. There is a common thread. And it might actually help you edit a little bit some of what you're doing. You may have taken on a board role or a volunteer piece or a new client because you thought it seemed like it was a part of the plan. And now that you have this articulation, you're like, I think when it comes time to renew that board position, I might let that go. I need to free up my time. It's not really driving my purpose. It's not driving my mission. I'm going to be a little more selective or refine some of the things I'm doing. And you find you're more impactful, more efficient, and overall happier, because this would be the ultimate, I think, intention for someone, is that they go through a process like this. And then once they've completed it, activated it, started to live it, they look at their calendar on their phone, and every single meeting, they're like, yes, I can't wait to go to that meeting. I'm excited for that. And some of us, and I've been guilty of it, you look at your Google Calendar and you're like,
should I cancel this?
Yes. Why is this on my calendar?
Why?
We would like to cure you of that. If we can accomplish that, we have succeeded on a massive level.
I have to just pause there, Jess, because I was literally in a meeting this week, and I was WhatsApping one of my friends, and I'm like, in this meeting, and he wasn't in the meeting. He's like, "Are you texting me?" And I'm like, I just had this real self-realization that I did not edit this properly, and he was laughing at me like that. He's like, "Well, like if you're WhatsApping me, you clearly know what to do about this." But Jess, you said something. Well, I want to connect something that Sabine said to something that you said, and then I want to connect it a little bit to the corporate persona as well, because I think okay, I want to get it. Sabine, was giving this amazing, and one of my absolute favorite things about Sabine, and every time I work with her, I'm just like, oh, Sabine is like the master of metrics and data and data points. She does nothing. I don't even know if you wake up in the morning unresearched. Like everything Sabine does is like research. She knows like a walking factoid. I'm always like, the CFO analytical ones, shouldn't I be the one pulling out those facts? But the reason why I love that she gave this very specific example here and then said, I, Sabine, am a translator. And the way I connect all that, she intentionally used a word that she had to really seek to understand. Because Sabine and I have never had this discussion because, we met after she had started these businesses and things like this. But like intuitively, and this is so hard. I was actually talking to my son's counselor coincidentally this week about, like how like we intuitively do things and we don't actually know how we process those things and how we do those things. So what I'd like to connect, and Jess, you just said it too, in terms of, it's really like how you activate that. And I think that if I connect this also to that corporate inertia, probably like every decade in my career, I would hit these moments where I was like, and I'm assuming some corporate C-suite, you don't get to the C-suite if you're not good at what you do. But what's interesting is the linear way that jobs and roles are defined is not dynamic enough for your authentic identity. And so what happens is you end up in a role, and I probably had this I call it like my decade check all along my career, where I ended up in a role and I was like, I'm in this role, but like I'm really good at these other things that are interesting to me. And I need these other things to actually be good at what I'm doing. But it creates either internal conflict with my other stakeholders, because it's kind of like this turf thing in the corporate world, or it's like, why is she doing it? It creates this sense of like, why are you doing this? Why are you, going back to the inquiry, why are you being curious about these things? Especially in a world where, everyone's kind of supposed to stay in their lane. And so one thing just for me in the corporate world is I had not defined my authentic identity. And so what it is I came into these roles as, like whatever, let's make it up. Let's just take the first one, CFO. And people would say, well, why are you asking about technology? Why are you asking about operations? Why are you deeply questioning our data strategy? I would hear this, you're the CFO. And I'm like, right. But what I didn't say is I'm a connector of patterns. And as a CFO, I have a fiduciary duty to guard the assets and the fiduciary spend we have. And my role is to challenge what we're doing to make sure that I'm like if you, as the CFO, is like the guardian, if you will, like I'm guarding the outward cash flows, that we're building a foundation that's future proof, right? And so it's actually my job to ask these questions. And I'm using that as an example because often in the corporate world, we believe that our role and our brand, our corporate logo, is our identity. Yeah. First and foremost, I also did a post about Heather. That can be quickly taken away from you the higher you climb. It happens. You won't be prepared for it and it won't be justified. It just happens. But the second adage to that is you not only have to have your own sense of self that's independent and objective from that, but you have to navigate this new world, which is, how do I want to operate in that world? And how do I give clarity to those with whom I'm operating of my why? If you have that, that transforms not only your brand, but it transforms your role, and it helps your, let's just kind of stick with the corporate world for just a minute, helps your colleagues understand your why, which then creates that engagement that you're looking for. And I'm using my personal example. For every single person that is different, right? And so, you know, Sabine, it connects very deeply to what you said about being a translator. I think that many people, if you ask them, what is your like one or two things that you do that's unexpected, but that actually makes you that home run player in that role? It's probably not, like, I'll go back to you, Sabine. It's not that you know all the data and facts and that you're a researcher. I mean, that's an amazing skill, but that's not YOU, right? Like, that's not you, the translator. You know all those data and facts because your ability to weave the tapestry of that across multi-dimensions that other people don't see is, in my mind, bar none. That's what makes you you. But people may just think, I'm genericizing this. She's a researcher. No. Like, you know, so I want to kick that back to you because I think that's so important that people don't, you don't understand your why, it not only affects your own ownership, but it also affects deeply the way people interact and engage with you.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear like what you all think about that kind of framing.
So in my case, when you look at my why, as I, collected 25 years of experience, and I started with strategy, right? I started from strategy, and I'd call it strategic execution, right? Because you cannot do strategy without executing it, but you have to plan for it. And planning means you have to do a lot of research. You have to have bulletproof information when you walk into a C-suite office or into a board meeting. So data for me is critical, and I may be using ChatGPT, but I can see all the crap coming out of it, and I can go and research it and say, this is wrong. And I can see it even by reading the content coming out of it. So, but that is 25 years of training. My why, though, is today is about de-risking corporate venturing for insurance companies or financial services institutions. Because when you look at pension and life, a lot of insurers and a lot of banks also do life and wealth and things which are overlapping with insurance, like asset management. So that's a financial services insurance. So what is corporate venturing? There are, for me, a number of pillars of corporate venturing. For sure, you need to understand the VC market, and you need to understand how VC are investing in what. So that's why I always have those numbers in my head, and I know why I'm looking at specific adjacency like future of work or cyber. It's not by chance. I know those are major trends in generative AI, which are going to affect our world forever and are going to disrupt completely our industry. Second, it's about, so therefore, that means researching, understanding, but then it's about communicating. The only way I can actually attract startups, relevant adjacencies, is by being out there. So social media becomes a really big part of my everyday, being on stage, doing keynotes. It's part of the brand building, but it's also about part of the understanding. Then there are two sides of corporate venturing. One is what we call lending or business development, which is about go-to-market strategies. You still have to do that bloody research to actually know which target market you are going to go after, right? So again, more planning before we do the executing. And the last pillar for me is investing. And so when you look at the transferability strategies, you can invest, you can do M&A and all those things. So you need to actually understand which target will be a good target for corporate or also a VC. So my pillar is, yes, branding. So we do it every day. It's going to be BD, business development, go-to-market, really understanding how we get into those commercialization opportunity with corporations. Because if a startup can actually sell to a corporate, B2B is my world, right? They are likely to get investment. And then we go into investing. So my why is de-risking corporate venturing for insurance and financial services institutions, and doing that by looking at those pillars: branding, commercialization, investing, and any other transferability strategy which actually deliver outcome, financial outcome, growth. So that takes me to my next question to you. So what are the best way to do that? How do you do that? And maybe Jess, you start, how do we do this during our workshop? How do we start plugging and linking those things together?
Okay, so this is my favorite part because we all three perform a lot of strategy. So connecting all of these dots and pieces, it's the most fun part of any process. Is so you have all of these inputs and elements, from this investigation. We're asking all of these key questions, and it's a simplification process. And I think we all know one of the most challenging things in the world is to make something complex really simple. And Sabine just gave the most beautiful example. If she led with all the things she did, so because it's a lot of things, and reverse engineers it to de-risk, like that's a very simple, concise, that's hard to do. But she starts with, and she had to go through that, by the way. At some point, she had to go through the complex reverse engineering to get to de-risk. But then de-risk is what she now leads with. She doesn't lead with business development, go to market, research. Because you would get lost immediately. But she starts with that, and then everything is organized in such a beautiful hierarchy under that it makes perfect logic, perfect sense. And for her own efficiency as a leader, no one's going to question any of it. They're like, oh, because it all leads to this why. So we're going to do the messy part, but we'll do it in these little segments so that we will get all of those inputs, all of that information, and we start to edit and pair and scrape until we get to the core essence of your why, your values, your points of view. And then what is that, from that point of view, what is the key message theme? Because if you read content from Lisa or Sabine, there are recurring themes. You're going to find the same key phrases. You're going to find the same hashtags. You're going to find a thread that all of that makes sense. It's not by accident. It's not by magic. It's by design. It's by very thoughtful. It would be amazing if it was by magic and if you guys would have so much more time. So there is some work involved here, but that's where the activation comes in. If we do this foundational work, we will take all the inputs, we'll create really key organized outputs, and then we're going to show you, plug this into your LinkedIn profile here, plug this into your CV here. This is how it's going to actually impact how you open an email. Hi, hello, dear, greetings, what's up? Probably not anyone would use that comes to our workshop, but some people might for whatever reason. But we're going to take all of this tone of voice, all of your key message themes, point of view, and we are going to infuse them into every single way you could possibly project yourself into the world. So that if I find Sabine through a TED Talk, or if I find her through this live talk on LinkedIn, or I find her through a post where someone else tagged her, I'm going to find that she is insanely consistent. And it doesn't matter how she came into my universe. I know this woman. I know what she stands for. I know what she cares about. I know what she's an authority on. And I will trust her implicitly because of her consistency. And that's the key.
Thank you, Jess. Lisa.
Well, first of all, making order out of chaos is like one of all three of our favorite things to do. And it connects to strategy execution. And it's applied to, in this case, your authentic identity. And so to both what, Sabine's example, very crisp, tangible example, and how Jess highlighted, the process, we're all process people too, the process of what we do. I think what's really important is that you don't just go through this workshop and say, oh, this is a how-to. like I'm listening to a YouTube video on how to do it. And I am horrible at working out without like somebody holding me accountable. So I work out with a personal trainer. And so I think about it like that. She simplifies things for me. And when I leave there, I understand, the muscles we worked out today and why we worked out those muscles. And so for me, it's like really building this muscle because we've condensed it a lot. We're all impatient people. We all have really busy lives and we all are output oriented. And I just want to emphasize that. There are a lot of things that are not output oriented that are, explainers or teasers or coming in a little bit, but and I think of it very much like I'm going to connect it to like training or working out. Like there's the people that go to the gym on their own. I'm not one of those people. And then the people that like look at the apps and I see them in the gym, like looking at their apps. And then 5 minutes later, they're sitting on the ground, like, what are you really doing? I'm somebody that's like very focused on efficacy.
Yes.
I'm going to do it. It has to be results oriented or I'm not devoting my time to it. And so for me, like just like I wanted to amplify the efficacy of what we're doing, meaning you will know. You may tweak, you may refine. I mean, we all continually refine, but you will know with clarity and with certainty what your core lineage is and how to build that, activating it during this workshop. The other thing I wanted to connect is last week alone, different week, 3 people called me and then they're in this transition period that was thrust upon them. In all 3 cases, these are people that have what I would say is recognized personal brands.
Mm-hmm.
In all 3 cases, all 3 of those people were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, push the buttons that you own. And in one case, the person had a podcast. And the other case, it was personal and they had an Instagram account. And they were like, but I don't have whatever it was. This job, this role, this company, this facility. It doesn't matter what the situation was. And I said, but you own this. And I know you as this. Push the button. And they all texted or called me later and they're like, oh my gosh, I forgot. And these are people that I would say you would say have mastered personal branding. Okay, I'm just going to say. But in that moment, the one thing I want to also say is it's not only figuring out your personal brand, it's creating levers and buttons like that you go to your personal control booth. And people can remind you, push the button because I know you as this. Activate it. It's that. Because when we get put in situations where we feel that we don't control things, we lose sight of what we do control. And so I just wanted to remind everybody that it's also to activate the core and the message, but we're building your dashboard with you. You're creating levers that you leave, at least 1 or 2 levers to Jess's point, that you own, that you can push upon your discretion. And we can remind you of that button if you forget. Okay, so back to you, Sabine. I just wanted to highlight that.
That's superb. You reminded me one thing that I want to do right now. I want to give a shout out to Greg Larkin's last article on the entrepreneurial exodus that he wrote on Ian Cook. And I think it's a great piece of content. Again, Greg, 3 people reach out through my LinkedIn DM whilst I'm on holiday, right? To ask me about you, Greg, but also because they read this article and they thought it was one of the best written articles they've ever seen, because executives are living the corporate life, many of them, and they are becoming entrepreneurs. And as they go to find investment, when you have reached 50, it sounds more difficult to get investment from investors. So something we'll actually need to investigate as well as to why that happened. But to come back to our live workshop on the 5th of September in Tel Aviv, Israel, we want to help 50 executive, 50 wonderful individual wanting to build their personal brand to the next level, whether they have a startup or they are looking at their own corporate existential life and how they scale that to the next level. We want to go through an audit. We want to define that mission, that core identity. We want to get into that foundational strategy, that planning, because if we plan well, we can actually execute even better. So it's about definition. It's about identification. It's about activation. It's about changing mindset as well. And what we have done is we have built a workbook, which we will share with our delegates, attendees, and an exercise book, which we need some exercise to get started actually in next 10 to 15 days. So I would say, everyone, make sure that you book to attend the workshop at the InsurTech Israel Global Summit. And we are doing this as part of InsurTech Week Israel as well. InsurTech Week Tel Aviv as well. And the goal for us is to start building new capabilities and have fun whilst doing that, actually, because if we are congruent with ourselves, every day when we wake up, we just have a blast. We just have fun. Anything else, Lisa, Jess, you would like to add?
I wanted to say, Lisa, thanks for reminding us the part of the levers. That's a big piece that we will go over, which is, and in Punks and Pinstripes is that for us, it's one of our levers. But we have networks of people, all of us do around us, and even getting a strategy around that of investigating, well, who are the people that are close to me that I respect, that I mentor, or they mentor me, and how can they become levers of support and power as I start to transition into maybe a new endeavor or a new position, or even just a new side project that I'm really interested in. And it's amazing how we forget that we have that support system. And so we'll be very conscious about that in the workshop.
Absolutely. Lisa?
I was just going to say, I'm so excited for Tel Aviv. I mean, if you follow any of us on LinkedIn or follow, the amazingness that's going into creating InsurTech Week Tel Aviv and InsurTech Israel Global Summit, I guess I just have to amplify the reason why we are launching this there is because of the just environment and aura of innovation. And so for those of you there or close by, we really hope you can join us. I can't imagine a better place than I just think of it as like the birthplace of innovation to activate this and to leave with this very tangible output-based renewal that connects to your business, to your outcomes, etc. Every startup founder I work with thinks it's about, business development, sales, marketing, all the things, Sabine. It starts with you and your voice.
Correct.
You there is no escaping that.
And Lisa, it's what I also say often to the founders who approach me, say, Sabine, I need to raise funding. Said, I go and check them out on LinkedIn, said, you don't exist. So my work is going to be harder. And so when we say that, it's not to be dismissive. If you don't exist, no one can find you, or if it is light and not thought carefully, the work gets harder. It's not only gets harder for investment, it gets harder for selling too. And so on that note, we will be talking next week around examples. So also join us next week, where we're actually going to share with you examples of who has been doing it very well already. So until then, bye-bye.